Hi and welcome. I'm sitting here with Jason Zander, who's the general manager for Visual Studio. And Jason just did an amazing keynote for thousands of people. So Jason, how do you think that went?
I think it went pretty well. I'm pretty happy to be here in Barcelona with TechEd and talk about Visual Studio 10 and .NET Framework 4.
You covered a lot of interesting topics during your keynote. Do you want to say something about that?
Sure. We covered a lot of different areas for the new product that we've got. We started off by talking about Visual Studio Team System and all the work that we're trying to do there to eliminate no repro situations for bugs and things like that, kind of tie things a lot closer together. We also spent a lot of time talking about what we call code focus, or understanding your code. Things like architectural diagramming, sequence diagramming, things like that. Being able to really go through all your code and your assets and the rest of those sort of things. We also introduced a brand new product, Visual Studio Team System Lab Management, which makes it far easier to go run thousands of machines for testing and things like that as well. And then we actually went back and talked about something completely brand new, which is Sharepoint tools for Visual Studio. It's the first time we've talked about that. It's here at TechEd. That's going to help tremendously. If you've ever tried to write Sharepoint tools, you know how difficult that can be. And then finally, we talked about the new C++ support as well as Win 7 support that we've got inside of the system. So there's a whole bunch of stuff in the release. There's a lot of stuff to play around with.
And during the keynote, you were actually talking a bit about C++.
Yeah.
So do you want to elaborate more on that?
Well, we've added a lot of support for C++ in this version of the product. In fact, we've kind of taken on an internal kind of branding for like 10 is the new 6. So we're trying to go back and recapture a bunch of stuff we had in the VC6 product and really pull a lot of that forward. If you work in C++, chances are you've got tens of millions of lines of code. Visual Studio itself, for example, is somewhere in the neighborhood of 60 million lines of code. It's a lot of C#, it's a lot of C++. Dealing with projects that large is difficult, so you need a system that will scale, can do large incremental builds. You need to be able to actually go through and find all of your symbols and find all of those files very easily across the project. So those are examples. We've also added new things in there for the debugger. We've really increased the IntelliSense speed and things like that, the parsing speed, all the sort of stuff where you're sitting in the IDE and you want to make it work very quickly and just kind of stay there. The final thing that we've done is we also demonstrated being able to use our product, Visual Studio 2010. We're actually at a pre-alpha. We haven't even shipped a beta yet. But we also demonstrated on top of a pre-alpha version of Windows 7. And we're able to show that plus the multi-touch support. So we've done a lot of work with MFC. So if you have an existing application, we make it easy to migrate and pull that forward and make it a little bit more modern.
And moving on to a different topic, which I'm sure is on many people's minds right now, it's Windows 7. Do you want to say a few words about Windows 7?
Sure. Windows 7 itself was demonstrated at PDC for the first time, so at some point we'll have a beta that come out and people can go ahead and use that and play around with it. There's several different features inside of Windows 7 that I think are interesting. The thing that we demonstrated with our product first and foremost was the multi-touch support. We've done things, for example, in Windows Presentation Foundation, which ships as part of .NET, where you can actually enable the multi-touch support in there. As we demonstrated during the keynote, you can actually go back and use MFC and write code against Win32 and do multi-touch work on that as well. So with those sort of changes inside of the system, we're really trying to make sure that the new version of the product makes it very easy for you to write applications that light up on Windows 7.
Another very interesting topic is ALM, or Application Lifecycle Management, and I know for a fact that lots and lots of developers would like to know more about the new releases of Visual Studio Team System. So
yeah.
Do you want to say something about that?
Absolutely. We've been working on a number of different themes with Visual Studio 2010. One of those things is this code understanding, the notion that I can go through, examine all of the DLLs or assemblies that make up my project. We have a new feature in the Architectural Explorer that allows me to, for example, see a visual map of dependencies between components. That makes it much easier to discover how things are wired together, where your boundaries are, and things like that. So much easier for navigation. We've also done a lot of work around UML and modeling, so you can generate sequence diagrams of your code and how things are stitched together. It makes things a lot easier. On the TFS side, we've introduced a new feature called gated check-ins. If you ever have broken the build and you don't want the build to break again, right? What you'd like is to have the system actually test it for you, all the configurations and stuff like that. Don't need to break the build. Those are awesome. I'd say one of the other big themes that we've got is working around trying to get rid of this, what we call a no repro. There's a bug, somebody files it, it's like, on my machine. I don't know what's wrong with yours, but you must be wrong, right? Well,
Yeah.
we want to get rid of that. So we've added features, for example, where as a tester is running the test, they can actually record a video of the steps that they've done.
Cool.
So as a developer, you can actually see, oh, it was this step that failed, and wow, okay, the picture doesn't lie, it must have actually failed.
That's cool.
Right? So we have those sorts of features. We also have what's called historical debugging, which keeps track of, as the tester is running this, you can go pick it up as a developer later and actually debug and step through all of that code and figure out, wow, okay, this was the state, figure these bugs out. So there's a number of things kind of in that bucket. They're designed to help get rid of this. It works on my machine. I don't know why it didn't work for you. That decreases the amount of time it takes to go fix and resolve a
Absolutely.
defect.
That sounds really amazing.
It's some really cool stuff in there.
And I have one more thing to ask you, and this is a topic I don't really know too much about myself. I'm not really comfortable with it, so maybe you can shed some light on it, and that's SharePoint tools.
Well, we've gotten a lot of requests from people for SharePoint tools, and at TechEd today, we announced we are doing SharePoint tooling. I think the interesting thing about this is you can write custom web parts for SharePoint. Very popular system. The problem is, do you like GUIDs? I'm a big fan of GUIDs. Like you need to really love GUIDs, and you got to love XML. Right? If you love those things, then you can write SharePoint parts today. Kind of figure that's not really the best way to use the tool, right? I mean, with Visual Studio, one of the key things we do is we enable you to go file a new project, build up parts very simply, and just hit F5 and have them deployed. And so we've enabled that exact same thing here for SharePoint. So if you get your skills with .NET as well as Visual Studio, if you know how to write an ASP.NET application or site, you can write SharePoint tools very, very simply. I think this is going to really, really streamline the amount of time it takes and reduce the complexity. We're basically sticking it right in the tool for you. Makes things very, very simple.
And Jason, there's one last thing I want to ask you, and
Sure.
I'm sure lots and lots of people would want me to ask you that same question. Just last year, we released Visual Studio 2008, and already we're talking about Visual Studio 2010. And do you think people will get concerned about our fast release rate?
Yeah, I think it's a very fair question. I think the way that we look at it is we'd like to have our product coming out every couple of years or so. We think that with all the new features we want to add, things like the SharePoint tooling and other examples that I gave, we really do want to make sure we have an opportunity to bring those out to market. And we also want a lot of good feedback, right? So our announcing now is an opportunity to share with people, here's where we're headed. It's going to be a while before the product comes out. It's a great time for you to pick up the product, test it out, and tell us, what do you think? What do you like? What things would you change? Now, that said, it is just for feedback at this point, right? So the best way to get started is to go off and take Visual Studio 2008. We recently released our first service pack, so it's an excellent release. Go ahead and get those things installed right now. You can deploy TFS, you can start writing your projects, and then once we get 2010 with your feedback in place, you'll be able to, upgrade and just move on forward from there.
So we've been discussing lots and lots of new cool stuff. So what do you think people should do? How should they spend their time after TechEd, after the keynote, which was amazing? Is there any place people can go to get like CTPs or find resources and read up on all the new material?
Absolutely. We've got a bunch of material that, as of the keynote, we actually published. We have information up on the TechEd site. We also have on MSDN as well. And we have released a whole bunch of brand new content on Visual Studio 2010 on Channel 9 as well. A bunch of detailed breakout, session kind of material. We'll walk through all the areas that I kind of covered at a high level in far more detail. Now, in addition to that, as you mentioned, we do have a CTP that's available for Visual Studio 2010. You can download it. It's a VPC, so it's kind of a self-contained unit. You can go through. We have walkthroughs that allow you to try the new functionality out and kind of see how things flow. And that'll give you an opportunity to give us the feedback. And then, like I said, deploy 2008 and then get ready for 2010.
Okay, I'm going to let you go back to your business now, and just wanted to say thank you for your time. And this was Jason Zander. So, go get all the cool stuff.
Great, thank you.